Hey everybody, this is Bruce again. Look, we're on another plein air adventure here. Just made a pit stop at the house. I've already been out this morning very early to do an urban piece, so you'll have to wait for that one. And now I'm just going out looking for a landscape. It's not real sunny today, but it might be a good opportunity to work on painting for a longer time. We'll see, because it's sort of bright, but not sunny. I don't know how to explain it. So we're going to go check out some options. And I want to thank you for joining me. And if you're not a subscriber, please subscribe. Hey everybody, this is Bruce with Habowskistudio, and today I'm going for painting number 2. I started out early this morning, as I said in the intro there, doing an urban painting. So I wanted to do a landscape, kind of Monet inspired, and I'm going to be choosing this little subject right over here. I like the idea of the debris on top of the water there, the little weeds and that sort of thing. So we'll see how it goes. The light's kind of nice. It's not super bright and sunny, but it's bright enough, and it'll, I think, allow for some more interest in the painting to concentrate on. So thanks for joining me, and let's get started. And if you're not a subscriber, I invite you to subscribe for more cool videos. And for everyone else, thank you for checking out my videos from the beginning. Appreciate it. So like I mentioned, this is going to be a Monet inspired piece. I just got done reading a book, a very good book by Ross King called Mad Enchantment, about Monet's water lily paintings and how they progressed over the years and other issues, trials and tribulations that he had. So it really kind of inspired me to look for a subject to pay homage to Monet, and that's what I'm going to do here today. Hopefully I can do the subject justice, and we'll see what happens. I just have an 8x10 panel with me, and I really just want to do a 6x8 because I don't have a whole lot of time, so I just kind of divided off the part I needed. And if I want to do another quick little color note, maybe I see something else, I'll have a little space down here. So that's one idea, is to bring a bigger panel and just divide it up, and then you only have to carry one panel, and you can cut it up when it dries. When it's done drying, you can cut it up on a table saw and divide them up that way, leaving a little space in between each image. Just an idea. All right, just starting out my usual burnt umber, and just getting some angles to the landscape. I chose a very high horizon, if you will, the other side of the pond over there. So I've never done a subject like this before, and it's going to be a challenge for me, but that's the whole point of going out and plein air painting, is to be scared a little bit in terms of, are you going to be able to pull it off? So, because all it's gonna do is teach you new things. So eventually, you'll have a what I call a big toolbox to solve any kind of problems. So I'm just kind of, initially I was thinking of mapping out some clumps of the foreground leaves, but you'll see as I change that idea later. Now at a certain point, sometimes I start mixing in I'm just using terp. Uh, I'll start just mapping out little thinned out tones of the grass, just to get some spots of color going on. Starting to do that more and more in the plein air work, rather than just all burnt umber values. You see I'm still messing around with foreground leaf shapes. Now I think I will try another version of this, because I really enjoyed the reflections of the trees in the background that you can't see other than tiny little strip of the edge of the pond. So I like that effect. Just really, that's really what I wanted to focus on. And like I mentioned, I'm not a big fan of Impressionism, uh, but it was still pretty inspiring to read the book. Now here I am just kind of getting what I'm looking for is a general tone of green for the reflections to get a little darker than a middle value on average of all the colors going on in the reflections, and then I'll modify those with darker and lighter tones later on. Just immediately gives me some dark shapes to start judging things. And some of them I simplified. You can see in the little, what do you call it, the tree reflections. Some are like broken up. The trees that you don't see are very thin groups of leaves, but I tended to mass them together to create more of a stronger dynamic shape. Excuse me. Just getting, and I'm using those shapes as inspiration. I'm not going to copy every little thing. I want to get that feel of trees reflecting in a pond. That's really the plan. Little time lapse of getting in some base tones of the green a little thicker. Get those started. I'm getting some sky tone in, a little bluer towards the bottom, and trying to create an interesting shape. I was trying to find a shape that worked for the whole painting, and in the end, after the fact, when I got home, I changed that shape a little bit. I didn't care for it. It's just too unnatural looking. The sky, the piece of sky there you see, and I think part of it is the green of the trees need to be modified more in terms of maybe making them a little bit lighter, because that sky value is very light, standing out a lot. So here I am blocking in some shadows on the birch trees, and you'll see as I incorporate some faint yellowy tones in there also in shadows to suggest the grass reflecting up in the shadows. Little bit of variations within the shadows, trying to leave certain parts to really give some vitality to the shape. It was a lot of fun doing those. I like my birch trees. And now doing the fun of putting in the little characteristics of birch trees with the where the limbs come out and other discolorations of the bark. A lot of fun. So you can see how I painted over, like I said, the sketched out leaf clumps in the foreground. I didn't want to end up painting around those shapes with the long reflections that I painted. So I can always paint over that, as you'll see later. Here I am putting in the highlights, which I used white with some yellow in there to warm it up a bit. Trying to get it somewhat thick to, as I get a couple strokes, it lays it on there nice and strong, and trying to come around a little bit here and there to suggest the shadows and the light wrapping around, as the tree form is a cylinder. So I feel I achieved that pretty good in a suggestive way. Really starting to sing a little bit right off. Just going back and forth. If I thought I made it too white on the other side, I'll add back in the shadow color, which I have little groups of color going on the palette. So I can keep modifying. Now the fun of laying the palette knife work over the reflections, suggesting the weeds and that kind of debris floating on top. Like the effect, and for first time trying this, I think I'm pulling it off pretty good. I can see, really, to do it justice, doing a small series to really understand what's going on. Finessing the edges with a fine brush just a little bit probably would have been useful while the paint was wet, so they don't look too pasted on, but overall I do like them. It's really interesting playing this back and doing the voiceover, because I can kind of do my own critique sometimes when you're out there painting, you're concentrating on this, you're concentrating on that, and you try to really get a grasp on everything at once. And sometimes you get caught up in certain parts, and other parts you don't even notice. And when you get home and get away from the subject, then you realize, wow, what the heck was I thinking there? That sort of thing. So, always interesting. Eventually, that'll get uh, not as much, because you'll realize as you go on doing this that you need to stop and pay attention more as you're painting. Step back, spend maybe 5 minutes at a certain points in the painting to study what's going on and where you need to adjust and make some editing calls. Some more time lapse, because you can see when I did the real time, gives you the idea of what I'm doing, and this is just filling in. Getting some more palette knife action going on. Lots of fun mixing that up with the brushwork. Now, some more palette knife to get the foreground leaves back on there. I'll use a variety of the palette knife to get the paint loaded on, and then a brush to finesse that paint, and also a brush to lay on some individual little bits and pieces to suggest the leaves of the birch tree. Try not to overdo it. And in the scene, there's not a lot to separate the levels. Like you're looking at something in foreground, that green, uh, the background green behind it, that's off in a distance, can seem as intense and strong, or in dark in value, as the foreground green. So I'm really going to try to pay attention to that and purposely cool the background greens, change them a little bit to try to suggest depth. Usually I do it by using scale when I'm working on my landscapes, scale of items compared to one another to give you that sense of depth. Trying to stay naturalistic to the scene. I don't want to stray too far away from what I'm looking at, because the whole point of plein air painting for me is to try to mimic nature's colors as much as possible with minimal uh, alterations in the actual colors. But sometimes we need to make it a painting, so it's okay. Getting a little more of the marks on the birch tree. Adding in some more highlights, stronger, once I have some comparative other colors on there as I'm going along, and find I sometimes need to intensify them. And sometimes just in key spots, because not maybe the whole highlight is going to have the same saturation. So something to be aware of too, and observe in the subject you're looking at. Trying to cut some of the leaf shapes by just using the white there. Trying to get some blades of grass suggested. Try not to overdo it. Hindsight, probably would have used a little bit of palette knife action in a vertical angle to suggest some blades of grass, get more of that grit of the dryness of the grass. But it's okay. There's always next time. That's why you go back to a subject and do another version. Uh, Study it. Learn some techniques on how to capture different types of vegetation and that sort of thing. Boy, that sky reflection in the water is really, I'm going to have to really work on that when I get home in the studio. Just too distracting. I think I might open up to put more sky blowing off the edge of the panel, might be better to suggest more space. But overall, I'm liking it. Trying to get some different shades of green in there to give variety. Just a few flecks here and there. And you can see a little time lapse. I'm getting the shot. Yeah, I've got the shadows in a little bit under the birch trees. So thanks for joining me. Okay, everybody, I'm going to wrap this up. I'm pretty darn happy with how this turned out. I wanted to noodle a little bit more, but I don't want to touch it. The only thing I might do is a few streaks of the show some water plane here. I'll do that, and that's pretty much it. And I want to thank you for joining me. This was a great adventure. This is number 2 for the day. Beautiful weather here in Maine, no wind. It's about, I don't know, 65. Really super nice. I'm going to take advantage of it. And thanks for joining me, and leave your comments. Tell me what you think. I'm pretty happy. Thanks for joining me. Till next time, bye. Palette I used was some burnt umber, a little bit of burnt sienna, ultramarine blue, cad yellow pale, cad yellow, and I put on some cad red medium. That's the cad red light. I did not use that. Use that red to modify the greens, and yeah, here it is up close. Really happy with how I handled everything.